Hi everyone, and welcome to day 27 of this artificial intelligence project where we're trying to make AI more accessible to more people. Today is going to be an interesting day. There was not a lot of coding today, but I have like a gazillion little things that I work on that I think you would actually enjoy. Anyways, yeah, so kind of like just to give you some context of what I did today. So I've had this kind of like domain name for almost 10 years that I bought at some point to kind of like do something interesting with it, right? And the domain name is hal9.com. And when I bought it, I was like, oh my God, like Space Odyssey. That's like a great movie. And, like there's this whole reference of HAL 9000. And I was like, HAL 9000, the domain name was already taken. But I found out that HAL 9 was actually free. And literally it was almost like 10 years ago that I bought it. And but yeah, I found that it was available and I bought it, and I've literally had it parked for a really long time, right? So honestly, it was until today that kind of like clicked, and I was like, well, maybe I should use that particular domain name for the project that I'm building, right? And I always had this idea of like, well, maybe a company, or maybe a project around artificial intelligence, like HAL 9000 or HAL 9 would be really cool, whatever. Anyway, so one of the things that I did, actually not today, but before this video was I finally end up watching Space Odyssey. It's like a great movie, but like for whatever reason, like I've never been able to watch it completely. And one of the things that, this movie is really good at, and, it's to go really, really slow. I mean, it's quite an old movie, so it's kind of slow. Anyway, so I kind of like watched it all. And, like the first thing that is interesting is that, well, first of all, it's like super slow. So it's kind of crazy how much things have changed over time. Oh, maybe I should turn this down a little bit. But yeah, it's actually a really cool movie because, it kind of reminds me almost of Interstellar. And, I think like there's a lot of like movies that got inspired on Space Odyssey. And, like the way that they present the concepts, it's the monolith, right? That appears at the beginning. And, like I've heard that it kind of like resembles knowledge or like progress, technological progress or whatever. Anyway, so I don't think I will be able to show everything, but so there's a point where, like they end up finding they end up going on this kind of like space trip, right? And they come the spaceship comes with an artificial intelligence called HAL 9000. And at some point like things go wrecked, and like HAL 9000 attempts to kill everyone that is tripulating traveling on this spaceship. And finally the main character needs to go and unplug HAL 9000, where like there's this very prominent scene where HAL 9000 starts singing. I think the song is Odyssey or whatever, and that's when it gets unplugged. I don't know if this particular AI it has a pronoun. I don't know if they actually use it, but yeah, this is basically the scene where HAL 9000 gets unplugged. So I don't know if this is great, but at the end, basically HAL 9000 ends up not being good, and it has to be unplugged. But regardless of that, I'm going to pause that. Regardless of that, kind of like HAL 9000 might have been one of the first kind of like conceptions of artificial intelligence way before we actually had anything even closely related to that. Anyway, so that was like the parentheses. I've had this domain name for a really long time. So one of the things that I did today is like I unparked this domain and I basically create like a landing page. Don't get too excited. If you go there, there's absolutely nothing. So you can go inspect element, and it's literally just, like it's just the title, empty page, and whatever. So actually, I'm curious, let me know what you think about the domain name. I know that it's probably a bad idea to name this project hal9.com or hal9, but I really like it. It's a domain name that I had for a really long time. So kind of like my plan is just to name it or code name it that for a while. If at some point I come up with a better name, like I'll rename it or put a redirect or whatever. But for now, I guess, we'll call it HAL9. And then I found out actually, I was actually thinking is like, well, not thinking, but I remember that there's like a couple web services out there that claim to help you create a logo using artificial intelligence. And basically, actually, like there's like a good research behind it, and this is the paper. It's called Logo Synthesis and Manipulation with Clustered Generative Adversarial Networks. I don't think we've talked about GANs, generative adversarial networks, yet in this channel. But basically, like the style transfer that we talked about at some point. Did we talk about this yet? Maybe not. I don't know. But it's basically my Twitter page. In my Twitter profile, the image that I have, I built it using another service that I believe also uses GANs. But anyways, here's the research paper. And here's the service. I don't know actually if the service, they use the exact same kind of like paper. But yeah, basically you can create a logo. And I did something like this. Like I just literally type, make a logo name, describe your business, computers. Oh, no, not that. Computers. No. Let's say software service for artificial intelligence. Next, slogan, easy to use AI. I don't know, whatever. And then it kind of like auto-generates the logos, which is kind of like pretty interesting. So, I don't know how much it actually takes out of it. But I look at some of them. I think it's actually great as an exploratory tool. Like you just get to see auto-generated logos using, I don't know exactly what they use in this page actually. Maybe they're not even using AI. I don't know exactly, but there's definitely a page that supports that. Sorry, a paper that supports that. So it's definitely possible. And like they have AI in their name, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're using AI. Let me just see if they actually have a reference of how it works. Maybe not. Poster flying, AI logo. Anyways, so we don't know exactly how the service uses it, but I found out that this was kind of like cool just to generate a few. However, I didn't really end up liking that particular logo, so I just played, and this didn't took that long, but I spent some minutes kind of like creating a few variations. I'm not a designer, as you can see or tell. But I played with a few variations. I didn't come up with anything super interesting, but that's kind of like what I did. All right, the other piece that I kind of like spent time, I took a look at a bit closer at some of these sites that we've been playing with. One of them is called Lobe AI. It looks pretty cool. I installed it, but I have like 2 cameras plugged in my computer, and somehow I actually have three virtual cameras plugged, like the webcam, the one that I use to record, and also Camtasia, which is like a Mac tool for like just whatever, doesn't matter. But basically I wasn't able to get Lobe AI to work because I don't think they have support for switching web cameras, so that kind of like didn't work for me. But it definitely looks cool. But what is interesting, then I kind of like end up looking to see kind of like what was going on with this particular project. And I actually end up finding out that this project, Lobe AI, got acquired by Microsoft apparently 1 year and a half. 1 year and a half ago, whatever that is. And then what is really interesting is like, I was taking a look at this picture and I found out, I was like, wait, this person looks familiar. He looks like Jaron Lanier. And I'm like, wait, I'm pretty sure it's Jaron, and I've worked with him in the past. So I kind of, I actually end up working with this person. I think Jaron was probably part of the group that acquired this company, Lobe AI. I don't know what was his role, but like I found it quite interesting that is someone that I know. I don't think I know anyone of the other people. Anyways, yeah, so I have a couple papers and patents with Jaron. So this is me, and that's Jaron Lanier. And it was not just Jaron, but like we basically, when I was working back at Microsoft Research, we had like this summer project where we worked on kind of like a virtual reality display for visualizations or whatever. Anyway, so that was kind of cool to see. And then kind of like I took a look at one of the other ones called abacus.ai, right? And yeah, this is a new company. I don't think you can't even get the demo. They just have a few screenshots or whatever. But one of the things that I noticed that a lot of people have been doing is, and I actually, when I started working on this project, I had no idea about abacus.ai. And just kind of like when I started building stuff, I built it out of, intuition, as I've been mentioning on these YouTube videos. And it was interesting that what I noticed is that they kind of like follow a similar approach to what we were doing. Like, hey, and it makes sense, right? I don't think Abacus is the only ones doing it. Like, I think if you look at other ones like RapidMiner or whatever, they have some version of these where they kind of like split like data sets with models, with like visualizations or whatever, right? It just kind of makes sense. But, like a couple days ago, we were discussing that, like if you have like the views split this way or the same way that we have them, if you have the data sets and then the models, then you kind of like predict or do a visualization over a model, and then you need to go back and change the data set and do it all over again, right? So a couple days ago, we started kind of like brainstorming, and we were like, well, maybe there's like a better way of doing this, right? And we kind of like brainstorm on kind of like the concept of pipelines. So I actually had to, when I actually had to block the previous videos that we recorded, because I think there is a way of kind of like, I think this is an interesting concept that, like not a lot of other companies have figured out, or maybe they do, but I have no idea that they have. And at least from all that I've seen, like all of them work in that way where like you split the data sets with the models and whatever. And kind of like I gave it another thought, and I was like, well, maybe it makes sense to actually create a patent, right? For this particular thing. And honestly, like I'm not a big believer on patents for, like enforcing them. But one of the things that scare me is that, as you can see, this whole space is getting pretty crowded. There's there's probably like 10, 15, 20 different companies kind of like trying to make AI more accessible, right? And one of the things that scares me a little bit is like, I don't want to be in a situation where like I'm developing all these kind of like in the public, and then we launched alpha or whatever, right? I don't want someone to come and be like, haha, by the way, like we have a patent, you can't use this, and, we're going to sue you or whatever, right? So I kind of like got a teensy bit paranoid, because I was like, well, I really don't want to get into patents for enforcing them, but like I don't want to be in the situation where like someone comes and claims that all the stuff that we're doing here, like it's not allowed because for whatever reason. So I kind of like started looking into patents, and I started with the USPTO, which is the United States Patent Trademark Office. Anyway, something like that. So I went to this website, and basically I just tried to kind of like figure out. I learned that there's different types of application of patents. There's utility patents, and there is design patents. In this particular case, we are doing utility patents. So that was kind of like the first thing to figure out. And I found out, like I basically came up with this patent, trying to figure out what we need for a patent and utility patent. And then I kind of like went deeper, and I have a helper here. And hey, you. So basically, I found out that, we need a utility patent, but then I was looking at the requirements of the actual utility patent. All right, Mila, you can sit over there while I'm recording, deal?
No.
All right. And anyway, so I found out like the list of requirements, and it's like super, super, super long. And basically these are the requirements. And I was like, okay, like, so the requirements don't look that bad for filing a utility patent. What really threw me off at some point is I was kind of like in between looking at this website and then looking at Hacker News. There was a post somewhere in here, and I tend to do this a lot, where I just search to see, if someone has already discussed kind of like creating patents on Hacker News. And I found out that basically, like someone was actually giving advice and was like, do not attempt to do this yourself. It's super hard. And then I was like, okay, like let me look at the details. And the thing that is really hard. So it's not that hard to write, I think, to write the patent on its own, like the utility patent. What is super hard is to get it right. So basically, I don't think it's this page, but like somewhere in here, like it actually gets explained all the stuff that you need to do. Like you need to submit it. You need to use like the correct language. You need to incorporate like a search. Like it's very hard on the kind of like procedural level. Like you need to basically define all the things that you're doing. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to work. So anyway, so I pretty much, is this for me? All right. So, yeah, so I pretty much like kind of like gave up on this. I was like, okay, like that's it. It's not going to work at all. And then basically what I end up doing is, I was like, kind of like my last resort was like, okay, I'm going to contact someone that I know in LinkedIn who happens to be on, like kind of like patent related, in a patent related company. And I was like, hey, I'm feeling pretty lost. Like, I don't think I'm going to file a patent. Do you happen to have like a real contact that can help me out, like just figuring this out, right? And it was kind of like an email, just kind of like a Hail Mary, like, okay, like maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. So I basically end up sending this email, and I'm super grateful because this person ended up responding, and I got a contact for someone that actually does patent. I don't know if the right term is patent litigation or patent filing or whatever. And I basically had a call with this person, and their point of view was like, hey, there's actually something called a provisional patent, which I kind of like remember reading about it. And with this provisional patent, basically, anyway, so a provisional patent is something specific to United States. And basically, it kind of like gives you a 1-year protection from the time where you filed the patent to file it later. And a lot of companies, or specifically startups, file the provisional patent. And then like if the product actually starts getting traction, or if they end up needing them, then you have the option to file a proper patent, which, costs a bunch of money. And it also, like it's a big like time investment and whatever. Anyway, so I talk with, okay, you can be here, but just be quiet, deal? Okay. Yeah, so basically like this a patent specialist is helping me out file a patent. And not a patent, but a provisional patent. And basically the way this works is like, which I found out that is super interesting. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but like you basically write, you basically just write it on a Word document, and you basically just describe, you basically describe what your kind of like thing that you're patenting is. And so you basically write it down like in non-legal terms. Like I literally just went to, as you can see on Word, on Google Docs, and I just pretty much just wrote it down. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So then I send it to this particular contact, and the contact is gonna, this patent specialist is gonna help me file it. And the cost is like it's kind of like an order of magnitude cheaper than actually filing like the non-provisional patent. And it gives us kind of like protection for an entire year. So yeah, I learned that, and I figured it was worth sharing. And then I have a comment from, I believe from Carlos, where he's kind of like, Carlos is pointing out that there's like a really cool plot, which is a density plot. It actually looks super interesting. And I think the list of charts and plots that we have is almost infinite. But I'll definitely keep it on the bookmark to kind of like potentially add it in the future. All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and I'll keep you posted and hope you have a great week.